utility project. And the utility project has the two screens, and we're going to mainly be working with the one screen, the first screen, to start out with. If you look at this main view controller, this we can see it's got a nib file, which is our view. And let's go ahead and run this just so we can see what the application looks like right now. And there's really not much here. We have this main screen that's open for us to make our interface on, and this little eye information button that flips over and then gives us our configuration or our behind screen. And we can click done to go back to it. So what we're going to do here is we're not going to get too much into the interface builder to start with, but we're going to have to create a little bit of UI elements. In the next module, we'll cover this more in depth. The first thing that we're going to do, though, is we're going to create an outlet on our main view controller here in our .h file, and this outlet is going to allow us to be able to connect to the view, which is our view, and this is our controller, and to display the data that we want to display. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable called UI label of type UI label, and we're going to call this total protein. And what this is doing is giving us a reference that's going to connect to the UI label that's going to exist in the actual view. A view will provide an implementation for this UI label. And what we can do here is we can create a property, and we'll do non-atomic retain, and this is just the standard thing that you do on a property. You'll find for objects that non-atomic means that it doesn't have to protect it. We're not worrying about multi-threaded. And retain, of course, if you remember, ups the reference count. It means that we're going to hold this into memory. We're going to take ownership of this thing. And then we use this IB outlet, and what this does is this basically creates that target. If you remember that diagram that I'd shown you where I had a target on the controller, well, this is basically our target that we're adding that's going to tell the view, yeah, you can bind to this thing, and then you can update yourself when this changes. So we're going to repeat UI label here again for the type, and actually we need to make sure that this is a pointer. This is one thing that you're likely to forget if you're doing a lot of C# development, and then you're tossed into this Objective-C world is, oh, I have to do the little star to make it a pointer. So total protein. Okay, and so now we've created our outlet here, and there's one more step that we're going to need to do. If you remember, whenever we create a property, we want to use synthesize in our implementation. So I've gone into our implementation file, and I'm going to add this at synthesize, and then the property name is total protein, and it fills that in for us there. So I can save this, and now we've actually created this outlet, and now any view could bind to this. We could create different views that could display this data in different ways, and that's kind of the nice thing about this separation here. So what we're going to want to do here is we're going to go ahead and look at our main view nib file. And you can see this looks familiar to what we saw when we launched this in the simulator. And we're going to go ahead and add some controls to this. But first, let's change this background color so we can actually see our controls. So I'm going to go to the background on this, and I'm just going to set this to a light gray color. So we can still see this eye, but we can see our labels here. And we're just going to make a label just by dragging it over here. And we're going to say total protein. Put a colon there. Okay, and then I'll just kind of put this in the middle of the page here. And then we're going to use another label, and this is the one that we're going to actually bind to the controller. And this one is going to contain the actual protein. So I'll put total here, just so this will be a place marker for the actual text that we're going to put in. And then the way that we bind this is we can basically, there's a couple of different ways I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you the traditional way first, and then I'm going to show you the easier way second. So what we're going to do here is we're going to look at this file's owner here. And this file's owner is basically going to be, it represents the file that owns our view. In this case, it's our view controller. And so what I can do is I can click on here, I can hold down the control key, and then click and drag to what I want to bind this to. You see I could bind this to either label. In this case, we're going to bind this to this particular label, and I've got some outlets here. You can see I've only got the one outlet that we defined already, and I can click here to create that binding. So now this label is bound to the outlet in that view controller. So if we look at that view controller one more time, this IB outlet, this gave us the indication that this could be bound, and now it's bound to this total protein. So whatever the value of this is what is going to be updated in the view. So let's go ahead and give it a value here. And what I'm doing here is I'm uncommenting out this viewDidLoad method. So in our main view controller, you have a few different things going on. The important thing to look at here is this viewDidLoad. This is going to be called as soon as our view shows up. And so we're going to give a value for the total protein just to show that we can update that in the view. And if we look at some of these other methods here real quick, you can see that there's a viewDidUnload. There's did receive memory warning for if we need to release some resources, if we're taking up too many resources and the operating system's telling us that we need to release some memory. This basically handles the rotation so that we could support a different orientation if we need to lay out our controls differently. And then this show info is actually, we'll get into that a little bit later when we get into the action, but this is an action that's already implemented, and this handles flipping over the view when we show that other screen. So for now though, let's just go into our viewDidLoad, and let's go ahead and after we call the super, which basically calls viewDidLoad on the parent of our class, on the base class, then we're going to go ahead and provide an implementation here to set the default here. So let's do total protein, and we're going to set the text property of this, and we'll just do a simple string here. We'll just say 200 grams, and then I'll save this, and now we'll run this. Command R is a quick way to launch, and Command period will stop it. And you can see we've got the 200 grams, but it's kind of cutting off here, so we need to increase the size of that label. So let's go ahead and do that real quick just so we can see this displaying correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and make that a little bit bigger, and then I'm going to hit Control period to stop the simulator that's running, and Control R to start it up. And you can see total protein 200 grams. So that's basically the basics of our outlet. And it's really simple to implement, not very difficult at all. But let me show you an even easier way to do an outlet. So we'll go ahead and wipe out this code that we did here, and we'll even take out this, and we'll take out our synthesize. Okay, and I'll go ahead and leave this. Actually, we'll just comment this out for now so we don't get an error. Now, if I go back into Interface Builder here, and if we turn on this help view here, this is that assistant editor, and let me set this so that it shows up at the bottom here. One thing that we can do is if we know we're going to create an outlet for something that's in the UI, you can just basically hold down the control key, you can click on this element, and you can drag right into this file here. And you see how it's saying insert outlet or outlet collection? If I let go here, it'll ask me for the name, and so we'll call this total protein. And when I hit enter here, you see it's already going to implement all of this code for me. If we look at this, it's created this UI label, it's created the property for it, and let's go back to the other view. And you can see that it's done the synthesize here. So now we can uncomment this code out, and we should be able to just run this, and it should have the exact same result. So this is just a faster way to do it, just a shortcut to do the outlet.